We are holding Vav base 6B3. 6B3. We're holding 6 lines from the bottom, which is to say in the right-hand column, Omer Rabba Bo. And Rabba Bo says, when does one make a blessing on rain? So let me first talk about this. We obviously do not make a blessing on rain. But the halacha is like this. If chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, we would have a drought and then rain would come, we would have to make this blessing. In other words, you know how it always works. When you don't have something, that's when you appreciate it. Exactly. So, keeping that in mind, let's learn this Gemara. Amar Rebbe Abo. When do you recite the blessing over rain? It's a beautiful poetic way. When the groom goes out to meet the bride, when the rain falls so strongly on the ground that it bounces back up, the drops bounce off the ground and meet the rain coming down. Now, by the way, this line, of course, every Friday night, we say this in L'chodoidi, right? We say this kind of word, Likras Kala b'nei Shabbos nekabala, L'chodoidi Likras Kala b'nei Shabbos nekabala. But it's another thing that in a Jewish wedding, when the boy is standing under the chuppah, under the canopy, as the girl is coming down the aisle, right, with her parents, the boy always steps forward. I don't know if you ever noticed this. The boy will take a few steps forward, like 2 or 3 steps forward towards the girl as she's coming down the aisle. What's going on? And then he'll back up. Why is he walking towards her? These words. When the groom goes out to meet the bride, to greet the bride. So literally from under the chuppah, the boy steps up a step or 2, as it were, to greet the bride and bring her in under the canopy, under the marriage canopy. Anyways, my mevarech, just an interesting aside. My mevarech, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Moedim anachnu lecha Hashem Elokeinu. We thank you, Hashem our God. Al kol tipa v'tipa shoyradet lanu, for every single drop that you have brought down for us. Rabbi Yochanan Misayim B'Hachi. Rabbi Yochanan would finish with the famous words of Nishmas. Ilu pinu mole shiraka ayom. Were our mouths filled with song like the sea? Ula shaynenu rina kamoin galov. And our tongues full of joyous song as the multiple of waves. We would not have the words or anything to be able to praise you. Al yazvunu rachamecha Hashem Elokeinu. Let not your mercy forsake us, Hashem our God. V'lo yazavunu, as it has not forsaken us. Baruch roiv ha'edos. Blessed are you with most thanksgivings. So the Gemara jumps right all over. By the way, Jerry, everything okay with Jerry?
You know, I saw him in shul today, and when he was leaving, as the service was over, he had gone and fetched his tallest bag and tefillin bag. So usually he leaves it there. So I don't know if he was going somewhere or what. I didn't talk to him. But then he left a little bit earlier than he normally leaves. So
got it.
And he wasn't in the coffee shop when I went by, so I came back home.
Right, no problem. I'll text him afterwards and make sure that everything's okay. Right, it says the Gemara. Blessed are you, Hashem, with the most thanksgiving. So of course the Gemara jumps right away. Most thanksgivings and not all thanksgivings, but we're being cheap with the Rabbi Shalom, with the master of the world. That's what you say, the God of Thanksgiving. So now you can begin to see our wording that we have in Davening. So now you're going to see this is where it's all coming from. Amar Papa, Hilkach, therefore. And now we're on today's Daf, 7A1, Zion Amid Aleph.
Okay, where are we right now?
There you
Hey,
are.
Jerry.
Got the Zion Amid Aleph. We were worried about you. There you
Zayin
go.
Amud- What is it again?
Zayin Amud Aleph. Is everything all right? Everything
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
Jeff?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Zayin Amud, literally the first word. So we just said over here. Let's go. Just go to the bottom of Vav at the base once again. We finished up the bracha of saying of rain with the words Baruch Roiv Hatahoidois. Blessed are you with most thanksgivings. Frank the Gemara Roiv Haidois Veloy Kol Haidois. Only most thanksgivings and not all thanksgivings. So Amarava Ema Keloidois. Right, you should say the God of thanksgivings. Amarapapa Hilkach. And now we're on Zion Amud Aleph 7a1. Nimriinu litavayu. We should end with both. Keloi dois, veroivoi dois. Both. And this is what more or less we say this. Veroiv, we say ke yishtabach kel melagodo batishpochais keloi dois adoinan employs. So it's both ways. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbahu, the day of rain is greater than the day of the resurrection of the dead. Because the resurrection of the dead is only for the righteous. But rain benefits everybody, the righteous and the wicked. And actually, Rabbi Pu is arguing with Rabbi Yosef. The Amar Rabbi Yosef, since rain is equivalent to Tchias HaMesim, Kavua b'Tchias HaMesim, Chazal, the sages mentioned the power of rain, put in in the blessings of resurrection. So Rabbi Hu said that rain is greater than Tchias HaMesim. Rabbi Yossi says that rain and the resurrection of the dead are equal in significance. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, the day of rain is momentous as like the day that the Torah was given. Shenema Yarayv Kamoto Likhi, my teaching shall drip down like rain. Ve'ein lekach ela Torah, and lekach always means Torah. Shenema ki lekach toiv l'sati lochem Torasi al tazavu. For I, God, have given you a good teaching. Do not forsake my Torah. Rova Oma Yoisimi Yom Shnit the Torah. In fact, the day of rain is even more momentous than the day that the Torah was given. Shenema Yarayv Kamoto Likhi. My teachings shall be shall drip down like the rain. In other words, rain is the metaphor for Torah. Not Torah for the rain. Me needed to rain. A lesser thing is compared to a greater thing. What does it mean? A lesser thing. That's very hard to understand. Because Rabbi looks at both of the pasuk. Siv Yared Kamotalikhi, my teaching shall drip down like rain. Big Siv Tizel Katol Imrosi, my speech should flow like dew. Make up your mind. Is the Torah, is the teaching like rain, or is it like dew? Im Talmud Chacham Haginu, if it's a Talmud Chacham that also has good midos, has good character, Katal is compared to dew, which is always and is beneficial and life-giving. Imla, but if he doesn't, even though he knows how to learn, but does not behave like a Torah scholar, Arveu Kamata, the Torah breaks his neck with as much force as a violent rainstorm. Tani, we learned, Hoy Rabbana Oimel, whoever learns Torah for its own sake, for the sake of dwelling within the words of the Holy One, blessed be his name, in the simple joy of learning, for no other reasons entirely, for its own sake. Terasa nasa loy sam chayim. The Torah becomes for him an elixir of life. Shenema eitz chayim hi l'machazikim bo. The Torah is a tree of life for those who cling to it. That's why there are a lot of shuls that are called the eitz chayim, the tree of life. And it says, "Refuos tia l'sorecha," and the Torah will be a cure that enters through your navel, just like a child is born with an umbilical cord that's attached to its mother and is nourished from its mother. The Torah nourishes the Jew. For the one who finds it has found life. But one who studies Torah not for its own sake, which we'll discuss in a minute, it becomes to him, the Torah becomes like a deadly poison to him. Shenema, like it says, we're now on 782, Yarai kamota likhi, my teaching shall drip down like rain. Ve'ein arifa ela hariga, and the word arifa, Yarai, is another connotation for killing. Shenema ve'yarfu sham esa'egla banochal, and they shall break the neck, arfu, the calf's steer in the riverbed. What is this case? Is where a dead body is found between two cities. They go ahead and they measure, and they don't. No one knows the story. They measure which town it's closest to, and that town has to bring an eglah, a calf, and they must bring it down into the valley and break the neck of the calf, and then ask forgiveness for the murdered body. So too, this pasuk is coming to teach us that somebody who learns shaloi lishma, not for its own sake, right? The Torah has the potential to be fatally dangerous. Everybody take a look at the top Tosfos. Okay, Tosfos that is not Rashi's on the right, Tosfos is on the left. The top Tosfos. Whoever is Isaac in Torah not for its own sake, the Torah becomes like a poison. Right? Tosfos asks for how could that be? But we learned to Masechtas Psachim. Yasik Adam B'Torah. Forever a person should work in Torah. Yasik B'Torah. What do you call it? Work in Torah. I'm losing the word. I have the word on the tip of my tongue. I can't get it. So Yasik Adam B'Torah should be Amelitz B'Torah, to work in the Torah. Afal Gav She'eino Lishma, even though he's learning not for its own sake. Why? Shebetoiv Shaloi Lishma Balishma. By learning not for its own sake, you'll come to learn for its own sake. The Yesh Shloima, so Taisus explains, the Trei Shaloi Lishma Haba. There are two types of not for its own sake. The mad of this that we say le'olam yasik b'Torah, that forever you should be Isaac b'Torah, afilu shaloi lishma, even not for its own sake. Hainu kalaima, for an example, kedei sheyikra Rebbe, because you want people to call you Rabbi. Oy kedei sheyichabdu, or because you want people to honor you. Oh, there goes the big Talmud Chacham. That's in those cases we say it's okay. Learn Shalai Lishma, because eventually you'll lose your ego and don't worry about it, you'll learn Lishma. But this that we say over here in our Gemara, whoever learns the Torah not for its own sake, it becomes like a poison. Hainu, that's who? One who learns the Torah because he's looking for ways to contradict it and to make fun of it. In other words, he's learning not for its own sake with a positive outlook, but he's learning the Torah with a negative outlook. He's looking for a negative outlook. It's old-fashioned, It has nothing to do with the 21st century. Jeff, you probably can talk about this more than most. There are plenty of rabbis out there that learn the Torah and then say it's all very intellectual, but has no applying it, but nothing to apply to today's life. Right? This is what it's saying. In such a case, if you're looking for that, the Torah becomes a poison. And the truth of the matter is, those in our world that learn the Torah as an intellectual exercise, but not as a blueprint of how a Jew is supposed to live his life, those societies among us are the societies that are shrinking, that are having shuls that are shrinking in size, not growing in size. And if you want to see where that is, to show the other side, just look at our shul, BJC, and how in 2 years we went from struggling for minyanim to now being so big that we don't even fit into the new big space that we have. Because a shul that's going l'shem shamayim for the sake of heaven, right, will grow and grow and grow and grow. Further, here we go again. Again, 782, left-hand column. Amalei Rabbi Yimon Rab Zera. Lacy my listening. Could the master come and teach in halacha? Amalei cholash lebei v'lo yachlina. I feel faint and I'm unable to teach. So please don't ask me to say a big esoteric Torah. Lema mar milsa da'agadah. So teach me an agadic thought, right? Something more simple. Amalei hachi amar Rav Yochanan. This is what Rav Yochanan taught. My diksib. Why does it say ki adam eitz hasader? For a man is a tree of the field. V'chi adam eitz sadu? Is a man actually a tree in the field? I mean, what does that pasuk mean? So says the Gemara, Elamishum diksib, because it writes with regard to a fruit-bearing tree, kimimenu toichav oiser loisichrais. From it, a fruit-bearing tree, you shall eat from it, and you're not allowed to chop down a fruit tree. Viksiv, with regard to a non-fruit-bearing tree, you shall destroy it and cut it down. This is in the case of a city, an Iranidakas, a city that's being burned down because it served avodah zarah, adultery. Haketzad. Im Talmud Chacham Hagen, who, if it's a Talmud Chacham who has proper character, Mimenu Toichav Oiseloi Sichras, you shall study from him and not cut him down. The Im Lav, if it's a Torah scholar who does not have proper character, Oisei Tashris V'Charata, you shall destroy him and cut him down and shun him. Amar Rav Chama, Amar Rabbi Chanina. My diksiv, why does it say? We're now in the right-hand column on 782. Barzel, the Barzel Yachad. Iron sharpens iron, so too does one man sharpen another. Loi malacha, mar barzel zeh. Just like this iron blade. Echad mechadedei eschaveroi. The one blade sharpens the other blade. Shnei talmidei chachamim. So too two Torah scholars. The Chabdanim Zeba sharpen their minds with debates in halacha. And now you see the great, unique Jewish phenomenon of chavrusot. We learn in yeshiva one Talmud on this, one student on this side, and one student facing the other student. And you end up with the mechemes ha-Torah, the fight of Torah. Because that's the way they sharpen each other. In fact, when the Cardinal of Paris, Cardinal Lustig, the Jewish boy that became the Cardinal of Paris when he was hidden because he was hidden in the war, etc. Towards the end of his life, within the last 10 years of his life, he came to New York and he came to Yeshiva University. And I saw what he wrote, and I'm paraphrasing. He came in and he heard this huge noise, and he walked into Yitzchak, the Yeshiva Yitzchak Elchanan, the Yeshiva of Yitzchak Elchanan, which is the Yeshiva of Yeshiva University. And he came in and he saw all these hundreds of chavrusas one facing the other, each one screaming at the other and learning, right? And he was transfixed for over an hour. And he walked out and he said, this is why it's alive. This is why it's alive. We, the Catholics, have to do something like this. Obviously, they have not, and he passed away. But the point is, those who have seen it understand its great power. So two Torah scholars, and you can see that in our shir, in our little shir over here, Daf Yomi, right? Just by the conversations that we all have on the different topics that come, whether during the shir or right after the shir, we get such a much sharper picture of what's going on. In other words, when one learns Shas, one is getting a PhD in an extraordinary amount of topics, especially, as we're going to see later, in business and in business law. By the time you finish Baba Kaba, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra, you have a master's degree in business. You actually have much more than that, as you'll see, because all of it's there. Inflation, the present value of a dollar, the future value of a dollar. What do you call it? The idea of moneyless money, of electronic checks, is all there in the Gemara. Credit cards, it's all there. It's all there. The idea was 2,000 years ago, our Chazal had already thought this through. And most of business law in America is based on Jewish business law, as we'll see. That's just an example of one line of one part of Jewish law. Anyways, further, Amar Rabba Baba Chana, says Rabba Baba Chana again, 782. Lama nimshulu divrei Torah keish. Why is fire compared to eish? Torah compared to eish, to fire. Shenema haloi koi divrei keish num Hashem. Is my word not like fire? Says Hashem. Loi v'lecha ma eish ein adolik yichidi. Just as fire does not ignite from a single piece of wood or a single rock, you always need at least two to get it going. After Torah, so too the words of Torah are not retained by somebody who studies on his own without a partner to sharpen his mind. A sword upon those who are alone, and they shall become fools. A sword upon the enemies of such Talmidei Chachamim. Meaning, we're talking about Talmidei Chachamim, but you know what I'm saying. I don't want to use those words. So, Oiskim Bad Bavad B'Torah, who engaged in Torah on their own without studying with somebody else, they become foolish because they think they know the halacha and they don't. And they become fools. They end up sinning because they do the wrong things unknowingly. Here it says those who study alone will become fools. And it's written over there in Sefer Bamidbar, because that we have acted foolishly and that which we have sinned. When we act foolish is when we sin. The Eva is, in fact, what he called it is a famous line. It's the Tipa Shebi Isa. We say like this, that anytime a Jew sins, the truth of the matter is, it's only because it came into him a Ruach Shtus, a stupid thing. And that's what happened. And the proof of it is 5 seconds after you do the sin, after you do the Aveira, you feel terrible. Why the heck did I do it? Right? So it's always that 5 seconds before when you act like an idiot, as opposed to the 5 seconds after, you go, oh, why did I behave like an idiot? The Iba is Sefer Mehacha. Others say from here, we're now on 783. 783. The Pasuk says over there in Yeshaya and Isaiah, Nayalu Soret Tzayan, the officers of Tzayan became fools. Histu es Mitzrayim, and they have led Egypt astray. You see, going astray is always attached with the word sinning, going astray. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Lama Nimshul Divrei Torah Ke'etz. Why is the Torah compared to a tree? Shenema Eitz Chaim Ila Machazikah. For the Torah is a tree of life for those who cling to it. Laimelacha, to teach you, Ma Eitz Koted Madlik Es Agadol, a small piece of wood ignites a large one. Ab Talmidei Chachamim Ketanim Mechadim Beis Gedolim. So too with Talmidei Chachamim, it is the young ones who sharpen the minds of the old ones with their constant questions. Much I have learned from my teachers. But from my friends, I have even learned more than from my teachers. And from my students, I have learned the most. Because from asking questions, you're forced to defend. You're forced to defend your position. And that's the famous story. I believe it was with Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. I could be wrong with the names. That he lost his chavrusa, his learning partner, and he's quote unquote sat shiva for him. So somebody came to be menachem him, to come to console him. So they started talking and learning, and the one who came to visit brought 24 proofs that the man was right. And the man started crying worse. He said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because my old learning partner would have brought 24 proofs that I'm wrong. And now I would have had to go ahead and defend my position and make me smarter and then make it much better." And that's the reality. And this is a great lesson. And sometimes it is lost in our current yeshivas. Children are meant to be taught to ask. Their job is to ask, to pepper us with questions. If they're not asking, they're not engaged. Look at this Gemara. Exactly. We're supposed to be learning from the students, from the young ones, which means they're supposed to be asking. We should not be afraid of questions. We should never be afraid of questions. On the contrary, we should encourage questions. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa Rami. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa contracts the two psukim. Ksiv, likras samei heisayu mayim. Bring water to the thirsty. In other words, a rebbe, a teacher, should go to the talmidim, to the student, to teach Torah. V'ksiv, but it's written in another pasuk. Hoi kol samei lechu l'mayim. Hoi, that everyone that is thirsty go to the water. In other words, a student should go find a rebbe. So what should it be? Im Talmud Chacham, im Talmud Hagenu, if the student is one with proper character, likrat samei hayosemayim, bring water to the thirsty, then a rebbe, the teacher, should go to the student. The imloi, but if the student lacks proper character, everybody is thirsty, go to the water. The student must go to the teacher. Okay, because the teacher holds him off, and the student has to prove to the teacher that he's of good character. Rab Chanina bar Chama Rami, Ksiv, your your wellspring shall spread outwards. You shall teach Torah to others. Uksiv, they shall be for you alone, and strangers will not share with you. In other words, you shall not teach to others. If the student is a proper character, the well springs of Torah shall spread outwards towards him. Then you should leave him alone. If he doesn't have the proper characters, you should learn alone and not for him, and let him come to you and prove that he has good character. And says Rabbi Chanina bar Aidi, why are the words of Torah compared to water? That everyone who's thirsty go to water. To teach us. Just as water leaves a higher level and goes to a lower level, how does water flow? Water always flows downhill. It starts as snow on top and goes down into the brooks and into the rivers. Divrei Torah, so to the words of Torah, a miskayim elabimi shadate shepela, are only retained by one who is humble. Because the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And you become humbled by the reality that lo yalecha michon ligmar, that you'll never be able to fulfill the task. Nobody can learn the vastness of the entire Torah. It's not possible. But tell me, man, we're not free to let up from it. Our job is to do. It's the journey, it's the journey that we celebrate, not the destination. And you get, the more you learn, the more awe-inspiring you get to the great people that came before us and the great gift of the Torah, for it's nothing more than that. It is the great gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bequests to Klal Yisrael, the Torah HaKadosh, the Holy Torah. It is made, everything that we are, secularly and spiritually, is only because we were honed, our hearts and our minds, by the Torah. V'amar Rabbi Shia, and says Rabbi Shia, Lama nibshul divrei Torah l'shloisha mashkim alolu. Why is the Torah compared to these three liquids? The mayim, water, like we said, u'biyayin, wine, u'becholav, and milk. Diksiv, hay l'kol tzama l'chula mayim. Because everybody's thirsty, go to water. Diksiv, l'chu v'shivru b'achu l'chu shivru b'loi chesed b'loi machi yayin b'kolav. Go buy and eat. Go buy wine and milk without money and at no cost. Because to learn Torah doesn't require money. Just like these three liquids, are only preserved in the most inferior vessels, the earthenware vessels. So to the words of Torah are only retained by someone who's humble. Like the case of Caesar's daughter that said to Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, woe, that glorious wisdom, your Jewish Torah, in such an ugly vessel. Unfortunately, Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina was obviously not a very handsome man. Amalei, so he said to her, Avicha Rami Chamra b'monei Fachra, does your father put wine in ugly earthenware vessels? Amalei, so the daughter of the Caesar said, Ela b'mai nimrei, what else should we do? That's where everybody puts wine, into earthenware vessels. Amalei said to her, you're the daughter of you guys are the Caesars. Your nobility, you should put your wines in vessels of gold and silver. We're now on 784. 784. She went and repeated this suggestion to her father. Father said, you're right. Why are we keeping our wines in earthenware vessels? We should put them in silver and gold. So he put the wine into vessels of gold and silver, and of course they became sour. When the servants came to tell the Caesar that all the wine in Rome got spoiled, who told you this? Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. So they called him over, and the Caesar asked, why did you tell my daughter such a ridiculous thing? Of course, he didn't take responsibility that he actually did the switch and put them into gold and silver. He blamed it on his daughter, of course. As she spoke to me, so I replied to her. She found it surprising that wisdom could be contained in an ugly person. So I explained to her also that wine is also preserved in ugly earthenware. So to the Torah is better preserved because I'm ugly. But we do find that there are beautiful people that are learned. For an example, Jeff and Jerry, handsome guys, and look how they're all learned. Says the Gemara, Zion of a days, 7b1. If these handsome scholars like Jerry and Jeff would have been detestable about their appearance, they would have even been more learned. In other words, the whole point here is not pshat that not pshat that they If you look at the Tosfos, turn back a second to Zion Amid Aleph. Just turn back a second to the bottom Tosfos, the little Tosfos all the way on the bottom on the left side. It's really belongs to the other page, but they put it here. Pirish, im hayu soinim hayofi. Not that these people would be. It's okay if they're beautiful people, but if they would hate their beauty in the sense that they would not be busy with their looks, they wouldn't have been greater Talmidei Chacham. Okay, back to our Gemara on 7b1. Davar acher. Just like these three liquids, milk, wine, and water, they only become spoiled from inattention. If you don't pay attention, then the wine turns sour, the milk turns sour, and the water will become brackish. So the words of Torah are forgotten only through inattention. If you do not chazer, if you don't keep reviewing your Torah, what eventually happens, it plops out of your brain. One of the beauties of the Daf Yomi is that by doing the Daf Yomi, Daf after Daf, you end up, as you might have noticed, reviewing a lot of stuff that you got to earlier. Because it's all interconnected, one piece into the next. You eventually continue to review what you did before. Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, the day of rain is great. It's like the day of creation. The skies will shower from above, and the heavens will rain down righteousness. Tiftach eretz, the earth will open up. V'yifru yeshau tzedakah, and salvation and charity will propagate. Tatzmiach yachad, the earth will cause to spring up together salvation and charity. Ani Hashem b'Yisef, I Hashem have created it. Birosim lo'nema. It does not say I have created them, meaning the heavens. Ela b'rosiv, I have created it, the rain, which means that Hashem is using rain as an indication of his greatness and comparing it to the creation of the world. Great is the day of rain. For even on it, salvation proliferates and grows. Shnema, the pasuk we just said, Tiftach eretz v'yipru yesha. The earth will open up and salvation will proliferate. Rav Tanchum bar Chaniloi. Says Rav Tanchum bar Chaniloi, Ein gishonin yordim, rain does not fall, Elohim kain nimchalu aveneseim shel Yisrael, unless the averis of Klal Yisrael, the sins of Israel, have been forgiven. Shenema rotzisa Hashem atzecha, Hashem, you have favored your land with rain. Shafter Shavis Yaakov, you have returned the captivity of Yaakov. Nasasa Avoin Amecho, you have forgiven the iniquity of your nation. Kesisa Kol Chatoisim Selo, you have covered up their entire Averis. Selo. Amalei Zeire Midahabas Ravina. Zeire Midahabas said to Ravina, this is not the regular Zeiri that's mentioned throughout Shas. That's why they go out of the way to say which city he's from. This one came much later on. It was not at the beginning of the Amorim. It came much later on in the end of the Amorim. Atun mehochem asinilu. You derive it from this pasuk. Anan mehochem asinilu. We derive it from the following pasuk. Ba'ata tishma shemayim v'solachta lachatas. And you hearken from the heavens and forgive the averis of your servants and give rain to the land. Amar Rav Tanchum b'reider Rav Chia ish Kfar Akoi. Rav Tanchum, the son of Rav Chia of the Kfar Akoi, said, Eina gishamim netzorin, rain is not withheld, Eleim kain nischayvu sarneim shel Yisrael, unless the enemies of Israel are condemned for destruction. And you know what it means by the enemies of Israel. We're really talking about us, but the Gemara likes to phrase it in a nice, doesn't like to talk down, right? Doesn't want to, it might see laws on Klal Yisrael. Shnema, Sia Gamchoim Yig Zilu Mimei Sheleg. The dry and warm seasons steal the waters of the snowy season. Sha'ol Chaton. They have sinned to the depths. That means that the dry season will be prolonged and the winter rains will not fall. So too, that the people, because the people have been condemned. 7b2. 7b2. Amalei Zihiri Dahavas L'Ravina. Zihiri of Dahavas said to Ravina, Atun Mehochem Asisin Lo, you learn it from there. Anan Mehochem Asisin, we learn it from this pasuk. Va'at, the one that we say in Shema during Bahayim Shemaya. Va'atzar as a Shemayim Va'avadetem Mehero. And you will restrain from heaven, so there'll be no rain, and you will surely perish. Amar Rav Chizda, En Geshamim Na'artzin Ela B'Shvil Bitul Trumas Amaisris. Rain is only withheld from the sin of neglecting to separate Trumais and Maisris, as we know in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that the Trumas and Maisris had to be separated. A portion for the Kohen, the Maisris would be the Maisa Rishon for the Levi, and the Maisa Ani, and the Maisa Sheni that has to come to Yerushalayim. Okay, this has to be done. The truth of the matter is, even now, things have to be separated out. You just put it to the side. But it can also now refer to tzedakah. If you get hard-handed and you don't give out tzedakah, chas v'shalom, the rain will stop. Shnema. Siya gam chaim yig zilu mimei sheleg. The dry and warm seasons steal the water of the snowy season. My mashma. How do you see anything about Trumas and Maisris not giving it from this pasuk? Tali debei Rabbi Yishmael. The yeshiva Rabbi Yishmael learned as follows. Because of those things that I commanded you to perform in the summer, i.e. Trumas and Maisris, which is, of course, the grains that were just harvested, and you didn't give it out. The next year, the water of the snow, the rain, will be stolen from you in the winter season. Rain is only withheld because of those who speak lashon hara, chas v'sholem. Lashon hara, and this is important. Lashon hara is not rechilus. Rechilus is telling lies about somebody else. Lashon hara is speaking the truth about somebody else. Too often we speak about somebody else, we say, but I'm only saying the truth. Yeah, you're only saying the truth. That's lashon hara. Bad speech. Who told you to speak out the truth? Shut up. Don't talk about somebody else. It's not your business. Torah says, don't be a gossip. It's the greatest destruction. One of the great problems of WhatsApp, of course.
There's a big problem with that. The big problem is, how do you protect other people if you know definitely a guy's a ganef or a guy's a stealer, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not lashon hara.
Right, and that's very important. So I was just getting to that. Jerry just made the point. Lashon hara is gossip. But if you know a guy is a ganef, he takes advantage of people. An example would be somebody is looking for money to invest. In other words, he's in the syndication business, he's in the real estate business, and he needs other people's money to buy the property and all that. But you know that he has a reputation of not keeping books correctly, of overselling the investment, selling more than 100% of the investment, playing around with the K1s, not, in other words, it's a Ponzi scheme, for an example. Of course, you have a responsibility correctly to make it clear to people not to give him money. That's not what we're talking about here.
By the way, Yitzchak?
Yep.
OPM moved into our neighborhood.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
My neighbor across the street.
Oh, really? Aha. People need to know that.
What is that?
OPM is other people's money.
Uh,
It's a very, unfortunately, in
It
today's
happened
world.
in the 1980s. Basically, there were two guys, one by the name of Morty Weissman, and his partner, which was Myron Goodman, may he rest in peace. They literally absconded with hundreds of millions of dollars, and they sat in jail for 5 years. Morty Weissman is my neighbor across the street, just moved in 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so in and of itself, let's go on the Kapschus. You treat everybody with a good eye, that he did tshuva, that he repented. However, if he would start going around talking about investments and looking for investors, it's perfectly legit to say 30 years ago, this guy is absconded with money. Can't tell you what he's like today, but you need to know this in making your decision. That's legit. But I'll give you the other example, and it's something that I give great credit to Jerry and others. You know, there was at one point where Rabbi Gibber was speaking on one of the Shabbosim, and somebody got up in the shul and let Rabbi Gibber have it, that nobody's interested in hearing what you have to say, you're talking too long, whatever it was. He spoke to him very disrespectfully. And the man apparently went back and apologized to him and apologized publicly, whatever it is. I heard the story, and of course, I too was up in arms. I never found out the person's name. To this day, I have no idea who it is. And that's proper, because I didn't need to know the other person's name. That was only purely curiosity, because I wanted to be involved in the gossip. But Baruch Hashem, nobody told me. Because Lashon Hara is a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. Unless the thing. The better question, Jerry, by the way, is with Shidduchim, matchmaking. That is a much tougher question. When you get called for information from somebody, how much do you give and how much don't you give? If let's say you know something about the family, but at the end of the day, the boy's a nice boy, the girl's a nice girl. Do you have to say or not say? These are very difficult questions, way above my pay grade. But that, on a day-to-day basis, is a reality. Very good. Let's keep going.
I'll tell you a crazy story.
Yeah.
My daughter was dating a guy, and we couldn't find anything about him.
Right.
Make the long story short, we got into somebody that was his partner. And I called up the partner, an elderly gentleman. Let's put an elderly gentleman.
Right.
And he says to me the following, as a rabbi, okay, that basically learned his Slobodka, believe it or not. And he says to me, you know what? And I knew he was getting his way out. He said, you know what? I even if I have a charusa with somebody, I don't even know their wife's name after 40 years, which is a bunch of baloney. A bunch of baloney. Right. It's impossible, okay?
Right.
Make the long story short, looking at this guy's Facebook page, we found out, and it's a long story, but my nephew is the Shaliach in Potsdam, Germany. His last name and the last name of somebody that he possibly knew was the same person. Got to his niece in Eretz Yisrael. The guy basically was a predator, marrying women and holding the in-laws as hostage during a get situation, and done it a half a dozen times.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of thing. That's other people's money story, just in a different way, right? That is something that's not Lashon Hara. That has to be told. That's being stupid, right? It's a fine line. And that's why knowing the halachas and everything. Thank you, Jerry, for sharing that. It brings this really to life. So let's do the Gemara here. Let's just get to the bottom because it's 9 o'clock and it's a short Friday. So let's quickly get 7b2. Amar Reb Shimon ben Pazi, again in the left-hand column. It's rain is only withheld with those who speak Lashon Hara. Shnema ruach tzafay techaylo gesher uponim niz omim l'shayin sosed. The north wind prevents the rain, and Hashem shows an angry face when there's secretive talk. Amar Rav Salo, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Eina Geshamim Notzorin Ela B'Shvil as a panim. Rain is only withheld because of brazenness. Shenema b'nyanu revim u'malkish loy. The showers have withheld. There is no late rain. Meitzach isha zayna hayalach, because you have the forehead of a harlot, of a prostitute who refuses to be ashamed. We are living in a time where, unfortunately, there's no embarrassment. There's no embarrassment in today's world, and that's a dangerous thing to the morality of the world. Anybody who has brazenness, will ultimately stumble in sin. And he had the forehead of a harlot because he refused to be ashamed. It's evident that he was already stumbled in Aveira. You had in the past, you will have in the future. It means if you're brazen, it's because you already blew it already. Anyone who has the attribute of brazenness, you're allowed to call him a wicked person. Normally, that's usher, right? This is a different case. If you look at the Tosfos on the right, the second to last Tosfos, Muta Likrais Rasha, Apo Bida Abba Kedushin, it says in Masechtas Kedushin, Hakaira L'Chavayra Rasha, if you call your Chaver Rasha, Yored Imai L'Chayev L'Zeh, you will fall with him, you are just as bad as he is. Over here, Mutter, over here you're allowed to. Devadai Nichshel Ba'avera. Because here it's a guy who definitely fell into sin, and he's standing with his rebellion. Because he's completely brazen. The falling into Avera, that's human. Being brazen and being rebellious about it, no, that's already a person that you're allowed to call a wicked person. Shenema, ha'ez is Rosh of the Banav. A man who is brazen, call him wicked to his face. You're even allowed to hate him, which is an Issa D'Oraisa. Shenema ba'oz Panav Yushna. The boldness of his face will be transformed. Altika Yisuna, transformed. Elos Yisone, may be hated. Amarav Katina, Ena Gishaman Nitzana El Bishvil Bittul Torah. Rain is withheld only because of neglecting Torah, the study of Torah. Shenema ba'at saltaim yimach hamikore. Through laziness, the roof collapses. Yimach means collapse, like Yimach Shemoy. His name should collapse. Bishvil atzloi shahayu b'Yisrael, because of the laziness of the Jews, shalayisku b'Torah, that do not occupy themselves in the study of Torah. The enemy of the Holy One becomes impoverished. In other words, he's powerless to provide rain. And the word mach, which we're touching of as collapse, means nothing more than poor. And if he's too poor for his assessment, 7b3. This is talking about the machzeh shekel or to bring kabbanis. The ain mikra ela kodesh baruch hu. 7b3, heading to the bottom of the page. The ain mikra ela kodesh baruch hu. And the word mikra, which is usually meant roof, it means over here it means a kodesh baruch hu. Shenema hamikare b'mayim aliloisav, who roofs his upper chambers with water. And when they do not see light, the skies are patchy, but a wind blows and clears them. The ain are elatorah. The pshat here is light is Torah. Shenema kiner mitzvah the Torah are. For the mitzvah is a candle and the Torah is the light. The skies are patchy. It means like this. Tana de Bei Rabbi Yishmael. They learned in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Even when the sky is composed of patches of clouds, and they're about to bring dew and rain, a wind will blow and clear the skies from those clouds, and that means the people who neglect learning Torah will decline. The skies will be cleared of rain clouds. Rain is withheld because of the Avera of theft, Shenema al kapayim kisa or. With clouds he conceals rain. Ba'ava in kapayim kipa or. Because of the sin of kapayim, Hashem conceals or. The ain't kapayim elachamos. And kapayim is nothing more than theft. Shenema umina chomas Hashem bekapayim. From the thefts which are in their hands. The ain or elamata. And the light, the word or, means rain. Shenema yoitz anaf oiroi. He scatters his rain cloud. So you see, because of this thing of that you grabbed with your hands, the sin of theft, Hashem conceals the rain. My takanta, what should he do? Yarbe b'tfilo. You should daven greatly, and you should, or in English, pray profusely. Shenema v'yitzava lev b'mafkia, and Hashem commanded the rain to fall because of the petitioner. The ain pegia el tefillah, and the petitioner only means prayer. Shenema v'ata al tispalu b'yada yom hazeh v'al tifkabi. And you do not pray on behalf of this nation and do not entreat me. Don't do that. That was in Yirmiyah. Something Gemara v'Amar Rav Ami Maidik Sid. What does it say? Ki keya harbaza v'hu lo panim lekilkel. If the iron is dull and does not wet its edge, if you see a sky that's dull as iron, in other words, it's a drought. It's failure to bring dew and rain. Bishvil Maisa it's because of the deeds of the generation Shehem Mikul Kolin, which are degenerate. Shenema Abuhu Loi Ponim Kalkil. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Loi Ponim Kalkil. My Takanto. What Takanto? Yiskavru Birachimim. You should persist in prayer. Shenema V'chayolim Yikbar. The legions will persist. The Yisrael Hichsheh Chochma. But the advantage of wisdom is great. Sorry. All the more so if the rain would have fallen, if their deeds would have been perfected from the beginning, and that they wouldn't have to go make tshuva and daven. Better to be good from the beginning than have to catch up at the end. Give me one. Okay. Let's stop right here. We're literally on the last 6 words of the Amid. So we're right on the dot.